The poem that I wrote this week called Lady Devil, it has to do with the relationship between myself, my mother, and her mother, my grandmother. The lady that I discuss in my poem is my grandmother, and the us and the her I mention is my mother and I. Basically, this poem has to do with the destruction that my grandmother has caused in not only my mother's life, my life as well, and how she's impacted us and how she's always had this hold over us, no matter what, whether she's actually a constant factor in our life or not. When I was 6 years old, my grandmother came to our home and she trampled over my family. She took my mother's car that she had given her as a gift. She took it from her, left us without a car, left us, empty, literally and figuratively. And basically that was the last time I saw my grandmother until I was 17, and that moment kind of impacted me because it's the only time that I've ever seen my grandmother for who she really is, for the devil that I see her as now. So when I was 17, my mother was invited to a Christmas party at her brother's home with all my uncles and cousins and my grandmother. And we had to talk it out. We weren't sure if it was a good idea to go or not, but collectively we decided that, we were so curious we should go and see and be a team, be together and see how it goes. And it was pretty overwhelming seeing all the family, but when I was outside talking to my cousins, I got a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around and it was my grandmother. And it stirred up all sorts of emotions in me and I freaked out. It was as if I saw the devil in flesh and blood for the first time in my life, and I didn't know how to react. She tried to hug me, and I backed up, and it was a very short, brief conversation, if there was even any. I don't even remember saying anything to her at all. I remember walking away and trying to find my mom, who was already outside, freaking out herself. So yeah, when I was 17, she broke me. All she had to do was tap on my shoulder and look me in the eye, and I fell apart. And then when I was 19, she managed to surface back in my life through my own actions. I got a tattoo on my wrist for my grandfather who had passed away about a few months prior. Tattoo right here on my wrist. It says Agnes, and it was a name that my grandfather had for me because he could never remember my name. So it was very special to me and dear to my heart. And after I got it, I found out that from my cousin that it also was my grandmother's middle name. Now, my grandparents were divorced for as long as I can remember and remarried and everything, but so even he didn't like her. But to find out that, it was my grandmother's middle name hurt, but then knowing that my mom knew and didn't tell me, that hurt even more. And that's why I say that she wedged us, because it caused a fight, it caused problems between us. And looking back now, I understand why she didn't tell me. But in the moment, I was hurt. So, it caused problems. Then, this past year when I was 21, I saw pictures of my grandmother. And she turned into this skeleton with this thin layer of skin and blood. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen as a human, and she just looks so unreal, and like as if you were to push her down, she would just crumble away into pieces. And I found myself wishing that, she would die, that, the hold that she had on my mom and I would finally be broken, that my mom would be free of this woman in her life who claims to be her mother. And I was so mad at myself for thinking that way, because that's not the way a good person thinks. You don't wish for someone to die, no matter what they've done to you or to the people you love. That's not up to you. You don't get to make that decision. And that's why I say in the last stanza that I was dealing with the devil when I wanted her dead, because that's not something you go to God for. You don't say, hey God, can you kill someone for me because I don't like them? That's something you go make a deal with the devil with. And the fact that I've always seen this woman as a devil, it was like, wow, I went to her, asking for her to die, and that's when I realized that she's got this control over us. She owns us, She made my mother, who made me, and she's at the top of that temple, which even more so makes me wish that she wasn't around anymore, because that's not a string that I want attached to me. That's not a person that I want to be involved in my life. That's not someone that I want to shape me. And granted, she hasn't been in my life. That's a choice I've made and my mother's made, but just the fact of her being, and the fact that, still without that connection of her physically being in our life, she still has this hold on us that we just can't break. So that's, the content of my poem. As for the form just happened. All my poetry, I don't pre-think a form. I don't go into it going, yeah, I'm gonna write this way. So I wrote the first stanza as it is. I wrote it, and then I continued to the next one, and I was looking at it, and I was like, I kind of like the way that looks. I kind of like the flow, so I wrote the second stanza, and kind of tried to mirror the first stanza a little bit. Didn't try very hard, but it just, it fell together. And then so I just kept writing, the 4 lines, 1 word, and I kind of wanted the 1 word to be linked, to mean something, to be powerful. And that's why I left them with us, me, us, her, us, First stanza is something that impacted us, my mother and I. The second stanza impacted me. The third one, it impacted us. The fourth one impacted my mother. And the last one, has to do with us. And this, I guess I connected them the way that I see the connection is in my head with how my grandmother affects us and everything. But for the most part, the form, it just fell together. It happened. And I liked what I saw, so I kept going with it. And a lot of times, if I don't like what I see, I stop. So yeah, the other part of my form is the repetition of I was. In the beginning of each stanza, I was 6, I was 17, I was 19, I was 21, and I was dealing. And I did that because I feel like it's the opener. It's the biggest impact that she's caused in my life was when I was 6, 17, 19, and 21. And then the resolution of how I started to be someone I didn't want to be when I was dealing with the devil. I wrapped it with that. So that's basically all I have. I hope you enjoyed the poem. Thank you.